Have you ever wondered what it takes for a city to crumble right under the glare of its own neon lights? Could the very place that sold us dreams now be the backdrop for a living nightmare? In Los Angeles, the sidewalks have become an unsettling tapestry of human stories, each thread fraying under the weight of despair. Tents sprout like unwelcome weeds between luxury boutiques and celebrity-frequented cafes. The city's famed optimism feels like a cruel joke when you see eyes hollowed by hunger and regret. Every block seems to whisper a warning that prosperity can vanish with one ill-timed crisis, and as the sunset fades, the true face of Los Angeles emerges from the shadows. Step off the polished boulevards and you'll find yourself in a maze of makeshift shelters where hope is rationed by the hour. Whispered rumors of drug deals and violence swirl through the air, making even veteran patrol officers hesitate at the threshold. This is not an episode of a gritty crime drama, it's real life. You can smell the desperation hanging in the air, tangled with the scent of stale blankets and discarded trash. Here, the streets enforce their own cruel logic. Nobody plans to become homeless in a city where everything costs a small fortune, yet the next thing you know, a single medical emergency or rent hike can send you tumbling into an abyss. Middle-class dreams crumble under the weight of skyrocketing housing costs and stagnant wages. A fleeting moment of bad luck can set off a chain reaction that no safety net can catch. The line between stability and destitution has never been thinner. Imagine having to choose between a hot meal and a bus ticket back to a shelter miles away. For many Angelenos, that agonizing decision is a daily ritual. Food banks stretch beyond capacity, pushing families to scavenge grocery store dumpsters after closing. The compassion of neighbors is tested by the endless parade of newcomers seeking help. Even the generosity of strangers begins to feel like a dwindling resource. In Skid Row, tents crowd every inch of pavement like a grotesque art installation. Beneath the famous skyline, thousands of souls huddled together in a community defined by hardship. Some arrived here after military service left them adrift, others after job losses stripped them of dignity. Many carry degrees, talents, and unfulfilled dreams tucked into worn backpacks. Yet the uniform reality of homelessness levels every distinction. Walk these streets under a scorching sun, and you'll encounter makeshift hospitals where self-administered first aid is the norm. People share syringes and scarce medical supplies, battling infections that would be routine in any decent clinic. Mental health crises flicker through the crowd like wildfire, unchecked and untreated. Every outcry for help dissipates against the towering indifference of bureaucracy. It's a testament to how systems can fail when compassion is outsourced to overwhelmed nonprofits. The police presence here is paradoxical, omnipresent in theory, absent in practice. Patrol cars slow down, then speed away, as if these alleys are radioactive. Officers admit they have no viable solutions, only empty threats and citations that mean nothing to someone living hand to mouth. The law becomes a cruel spectator sport, watching lives unravel without stepping in. And so the streets go on, ruled by the unspoken code of survival. High above, luxury condos loom, their glossy windows reflecting a world that seems miles away. Inside, wealthy residents swipe keycards and sip artisanal coffee, oblivious to the human tide pressing against their doors. The juxtaposition is almost comical, if it weren't so tragic. The city's dual identity strains credulity, a playground for the privileged and a prison for the vulnerable. And as the gap widens, the social fabric tears further. Local nonprofits scramble to provide meal services under saunas of heat, outhouses of cold, and tornadoes of fear. Volunteers shuttle donated goods in minivans that double as mobile clinics. Every morning begins with prayer that donations arrived overnight. Every evening ends with counting heads to ensure no one disappeared into the night. Their heroic efforts clash with an avalanche of need that no amount of goodwill can fully address. The Housing First model has noble intentions, giving people a roof before enforcing other rules. Tiny homes pop up in unused lots, offering a flicker of privacy and safety. But the demand eclipses supply, and citizens question why millions of dollars can't translate into permanent change. Whispers of bureaucratic red tape and misallocated funds breed cynicism. People begin to suspect homelessness has become a lucrative industry. Torn policies waver between compassion and compulsion. Some argue for mandatory treatment, others fight for unconditional support. Every step forward seems to slip backward, under waves of public outrage and political posturing. City council meetings devolve into shouting matches where empathy is drowned by fear. Meanwhile, the body count rises. Hidden beneath tarps and behind closed doors, emergencies are regular events. Cardiac arrests, overdoses, and violent altercations punctuate the nights like grim punctuation marks. Paramedics navigate narrow alleyways where streetlights died years ago. They carry more than medical kits. They haul the weight of systemic failure. Each life saved feels like a temporary reprieve from an ever-growing crisis. The story extends far beyond Skid Row. Tent encampments line Venice Beach promenades, creep into residential neighborhoods, and cluster along freeway underpasses. No corner of the city remains untouched by this silent invasion. Tourist hotspots, once selfie sanctuaries, now feature backdrops of humanity stripped to its essentials. The contrast between postcard perfection and brutal reality is jarring. People who once thrived on California's promise of sunshine and opportunity now seek refuge in battered vehicles. Cars become fortresses, offering minimal privacy but crucial shelter. Engine heat doubles as furnace. Car alarms echo like desperate cries. Every cracked window carries a story of sacrifice. Curtains drawn to hide teeth chattering in the cold. Among the forgotten are veterans who returned from service only to find the battlefield in their own backyard. Months of precision and discipline crumble into addiction and despair. Their medals hang unseen in dusty boxes, overshadowed by the scars they can't wash away. The VA clinics overflow, leaving wounded warriors to navigate a jigsaw of referrals and waiting lists. Courage on the front lines meets indifference on home soil. Single mothers juggle jobs, childcare, and survival with unimaginable grit. They transform sidewalk corners into living quarters, shielding their children from the worst of the world. Homework is done by lamplight inside a tent. Bedtime stories are whispered to drown out sirens. Their resilience is heroic, yet the system treats them like expendable extras. Innocence grows fragile under such harsh tutelage. Some manage to claw back hope through grassroots initiatives. Block parties double as donation drives. Impromptu art installations serve as memorials and protests. Street musicians perform benefit concerts, their melodies a mix of solidarity and sorrow. Creativity blooms amid catastrophe, a testament to human stubbornness. Yet even the brightest sparks struggle to illuminate the vast darkness. Local businesses face an agonizing dilemma: invest in security or invest in compassion. Many erect fences and alarms, sealing themselves off from the unfolding tragedy. Others keep doors open after hours, offering warm meals and refuge. Their employees walk the fine line between hospitality and personal risk. Every act of kindness carries a price tag in fear. Public parks, once playgrounds of laughter, now host encampments that blur the line between sanctuary and danger zone. Playgrounds rust under the weight of neglect, swings swaying in the breeze like lonesome pendulums. Families on park benches watch as the familiar morphs into the uncanny. The sense of community fractures along invisible fault lines. Faith-based groups pitch tents near City Hall, holding vigils that double as advocacy rallies. They chant prayers that morph into demands, their voices echoing in marble halls. Policymakers dodge them like landmines, promising reforms that never materialize. Yet the faithful press on, driven by conviction and desperation. Their faith, unshaken by setbacks, radiates a raw power. Amid the chaos, a new generation emerges. Youths who grew up knowing more about soup kitchens than summer camps. They write manifestos on cardboard and broadcast them with shaky cell phone videos. Their anger is potent, aimed at a system they see as rigged. They refuse to accept homelessness as inevitable and demand radical change. Their voices, unfiltered and urgent, might be the spark for true progress. Some entrepreneurs try unconventional solutions, pop-up shelters in converted shipping containers, solar-powered communal quarters, and app-based resource networks. Innovation meets inertia in a collision that shocks the status quo. Pilots launch with fanfare but stall when funding lines dry up. Visionaries learn that passion alone can't outpace politics and profit. Yet, they keep iterating, fueled by glimpses of success. The economic argument is stark. Homelessness costs the city hundreds of millions in emergency services, medical bills, and policing. Every life on the streets translates into a financial burden that taxpayers shoulder. Preventative investment in housing and mental health would be cheaper in the long run. Common sense clashes with budget constraints and political will, but the numbers paint a damning picture. Meanwhile, the city invests in massive infrastructure projects that promise glamour and growth. High-speed transit lines, stadium expansions, and luxury high-rises rise from the ground, even as encampments persist below. Critics decry the priorities, calling them monuments to misplaced ambition. The skyline grows, but the human landscape remains shattered. This pursuit of grandeur feels increasingly hollow. Tourists still flock to Hollywood Boulevard, snapping selfies next to costumed impersonators. Few look beyond the street performers to the human beings sleeping in cardboard beds just feet away. Theme parks advertise magic, while reality just outside their gates offers a far harsher spectacle. The city's brand rests on illusions of fantasy, yet its soul writhes in pain. It's a disconnect that grows more painful by the day. Los Angeles often markets itself as a city of reinvention and second chances, but for thousands the promise rings hollow. Addiction, mental illness, and bureaucratic barriers trap people in cycles they can't escape. Second chances are rationed by funding and political cycles. The notion of reinvention becomes another cruel irony. At City Hall, debates rage over ordinances that criminalize homelessness or expand shelter capacity. Lawsuits fly from advocacy groups, accusing officials of neglect and harassment. Judges wade into thorny disputes over basic human rights. Every legal victory feels Pyrrhic, overshadowed by unmet needs on the streets. The courtroom becomes another arena of endless struggle. People want to grow numb to the crisis, tuning out nightly news segments that feel too grim to bear. Yet occasional stories pierce the apathy. A musician who regains stability, a family reunited in subsidized housing. These rare success stories kindle hope, but also underscore how few lives they touch. They're celebrated as miracles in a landscape of suffering. The scale of heartache makes each triumph feel both precious and insufficient. Political campaigns exploit the issue with promises of zero tolerance or radical compassion. Candidates swing between tough-on-crime rhetoric and welfare state pledges, betting on whichever wins votes. Voters grow cynical, unable to trust any platform. Elections come and go, leaving policies stuck in neutral. The homeless remain pawns in a larger game. Tech giants propose digital solutions. Data-driven resource matching, real-time reporting apps, and AI-powered outreach bots. The pitch dazzles with efficiency, but on-the-ground realities resist algorithmic fixes. Human compassion and nuance can't be coded into an app. Homelessness defies neat categorization. Technology can assist, but it's no silver bullet. Amid this tumult, grassroots solidarity networks thrive. Neighbors form committees to share information on available beds and food distribution schedules. Local artists create murals to humanize those whom society overlooks. Students volunteer at drop-in centers, offering resume help and job referrals. These micro-movements stitch together fragments of hope. They remind us that real change often begins at the smallest scale. Yet the systemic rot remains deep. Zoning laws restrict construction of affordable units. NIMBYism blocks supportive housing projects in wealthy enclaves. Funding gets diverted to pet projects with higher visibility. The structural barriers loom larger than any individual effort. They demand political courage that so far remains elusive. In the final analysis, Los Angeles' homeless hellzone is more than a local calamity, it's a warning for cities everywhere. It exposes how affluence and innovation can coexist with extreme deprivation. It reveals the fragility of social contracts built on disposable optimism. The real horror isn't the tents or the trash, it's the collective failure to act sooner. And that might be the most satirical twist of all. Los Angeles still has the power to rewrite its story, to prove that compassion can triumph over commerce. It can lead by example, showing the world how to turn crisis into collaboration. But doing so requires honesty, accountability, and unwavering resolve. It means confronting uncomfortable truths about wealth, policy, and human dignity. The only question left is whether we have the will to answer that call. The tent cities of Los Angeles refuse to disappear, as if rooted by the collective disappointment of a city that promised reinvention but delivered neglect. Along freeway overpasses, a procession of abandoned mattresses marks the perimeter of despair. The sounds of honking horns blur into the distant cries of those battling insomnia under street lamps. Somewhere nearby, a volunteer hands out last night's casseroles from a tattered cardboard box. Each improvised shelter feels like an open-air confession, an admission of failure by the city's leaders and by each passerby who averted their gaze. Side streets away from Skid Row, a new pattern emerges. Crawl spaces beneath underpasses, transformed into subterranean communities. Makeshift staircases of plywood and scaffolding lead to hidden hollows where families cluster for privacy. Here, children learn to navigate a world without playgrounds or guarantees. Beneath the roar of freeway traffic, they play games of resilience, balancing on narrow beams, trading plastic figurines for homemade board games. Their laughter, hollowed by hardship, carries a haunting echo of innocence lost too soon. The food relief lines snake around community centers that city budgets barely fund. Volunteers stand under collapsing awnings, offering canned beans and day-old bread, desperately hoping to stretch supplies until tomorrow. Those at the front watch newcomers with wary eyes, some with gratitude, others with the hunched tension of hunger edging toward panic. Even generosity has its limits. When a single graham cracker becomes the marker between enough and too little, dignity begins to crumble right alongside appetite. Health crises lurk in the stagnant pools of syringe litter and uncollected waste. In one encampment, a cluster of discarded needles glints like broken promises. Nearby, makeshift clinics operate out of donation-funded trailers, staffed by nurses who volunteer nights off from their official duties. They stitch wounds that fester in the absence of clean water, treat infections that flourish without proper sanitation, and record stories of neglect in crumpled notepads. Each diagnosis reads like an indictment of policy, forcing a question: how did a city so wealthy permit such human wreckage? Mental health outreach teams navigate the labyrinth of tents, carrying clipboards and compassion. They offer counseling sessions beneath tarps, where the wind whistles through frayed seams like a sorrowful hymn. They distribute pamphlets explaining coping mechanisms for PTSD, depression, and substance dependence, though most recipients can't spare the mental bandwidth to read. Hope, in this context, becomes an elastic concept, stretching to cover shattered psyches, but snapping when the next eviction notice arrives. Elected officials convene behind polished conference tables, debating ordinances that feel detached from concrete reality. They tout new funding initiatives while neighboring blocks collapse. The gap between their air-conditioned offices and the street chaos grows wider with every press release. Campaign ads show smiling candidates promising solutions, yet tent roofs remain patched with plastic sheeting. Political theater unfolds on TV screens that glare down on the very streets demanding real change. Real estate developers paint grand visions of transit-oriented developments and mixed-seam communities, but often forget the low-income bracket entirely. Luxurious townhomes rise next to tent jungles, like castles beside slums. Renderings promise community plazas and green spaces, yet sidewalks stay littered with refuse. The ghostly contradiction between glossy architectural illustrations and the crumbling reality beneath them exposes a profound moral bankruptcy. Community activists stage pop-up art installations to reclaim public space. A stretch of sidewalk blossoms with colorful murals depicting faces of the unhoused, each portrait a plea for empathy. Onlookers pause, their phones hovering uncertainly between a tourist snapshot and a moment of conscience. The art project aims to transform passerby curiosity into sustained action. Yet, day by day, the paint fades under exhaust fumes, and graffiti, even goodness, erodes without infrastructure to support it. Meanwhile, small businesses struggle to find footing. Coffee shops near encampments install security cameras, hoping to deter break-ins without creating a fortress-like atmosphere. Patrons sometimes refuse to cross side streets, opting for distant chains over local charm. Store owners wrestle with the ethical dilemma of enforcing no loitering policies against a backdrop of human suffering. Every trespass sign feels like a stone thrown at the vulnerable. Beneath the surface, a network of mutual aid groups thrives on social media. Hashtags like La Housing Crisis and End the Tents trend for days before disappearing under the tide of viral dance videos and celebrity gossip. Donations pour into PayPal accounts, then trickle slowly and unevenly into the hands of those who need them most. Digital kindness glows momentarily on screens, but struggles to wake the concrete city from its slumber of indifference. Temple congregations convert Sunday services into mobile outreach events. Church vans roll through neighborhoods distributing backpacks with toiletries, socks, and sanitary pads. Volunteers pray over each donation, invoking spiritual strength for recipients who carry physical and emotional loads far heavier than any baggage claim. Faith intersects with pragmatism here, building bridges between sacred ideals and stark needs. Yet the scale of the crisis makes every act of benevolence feel simultaneously vital and woefully insufficient. The annual point-in-time count still reveals tens of thousands living unsheltered, despite years of data collection. Census takers navigate the same alleyways that outreach teams patrol, ticking off names like grim scorekeepers. The statistics line up in reports and slide decks, but they refuse to disappear from the streets. Numbers become a wall of mirrors, reflecting back the city's unwillingness to tackle root causes. Educational outreach at local schools highlights a growing demographic: children experiencing homelessness. Teachers wrestle with attendance policies as students arrive late or miss days entirely, while parents fight for decaying housing vouchers. Don't let this issue fade into the background of your feed. Comment below with your ideas, share this video to raise awareness, and subscribe for updates on solutions that work. Together, we can push Los Angeles to fulfill its promise as a city of opportunity rather than a monument to neglect. The struggle continues, but so does the chance for triumph.